Are we mid-turn? Good to go. Okay. Friends, we're going to start. If you'd take a seat as you want, please do. Welcome. Bienvenidos. It's great to be in the tent where we can have relaxation. As we did last week, everybody can keep moving as they wish to keep warm. This is a community event, and we want everybody to feel comfortable as possible. Buenos dias. I'm Kent Matthias, honored to be one of the ministers here at the Unitarian Society of Germantown. We're so grateful to be gathered here today, virtually and in person, in the parking lot. We are working very hard through the pandemic to meet a lot of needs in the community, from hunger and just helping people make ends meet, to stay safe, not get infected with the virus, and be together in person as much as possible so that we can lift each other's spirits by seeing each other's eyes and hearing each other's voices without the mediation of a screen. In order to do that, we lovingly and respectfully ask everybody to follow the guidelines. Everybody, unless you are singing in the program or speaking from the mic, is asked to be masked. I know sometimes my mask slips below my nose. If that happens, and hopefully we can all invite this of each other, just say, hey, I just see. We're trying to keep distancing, especially when we're seated in our pods, 6 feet distancing. And there's a sign-in sheet at the back. We request everyone to sign in so we know you're here. If you get sick, if you test positive for COVID in the coming days after being here, please let us know so that we can respectfully let everybody else know who is here, and we can all take care accordingly. Try and stay off the Wi-Fi on your device unless you are broadcasting out from over there, out here in the tent. And I want to announce that next week we are going to go inside to worship for the first time in the pandemic. So that is a big marker for us. It's Day of the Dead, and we're going to show videos of Mariachi Flores, a band that we've been with for many, many years, and they gave us permission, since it's the more COVID-safe thing to do than blowing horns and singing. We're going to show some videos and be inside. Then a very important, sacred, celebratory Sunday is November 7th. Our beloved music director, Mark Doherty, has announced his retirement, and we are celebrating him on the 7th with music videos, highlights. It'll just have to be like 10-second a clip highlights, Mark, to get anywhere near. No, we're going to try and do our best to. We have a number of video highlights of the choir and Mark's musical accompaniment groups over the years. We're going to try and show some meaningful highlights, and Mark will be playing the piano. Inside there is no singing, so we'll limp along with that as we can. And then afterwards, we're going to have a lunch out here in the tent. For folks who feel comfortable experiencing the worship service on virtual, you are welcome to come to the lunch. And outside there can be singing, so I have a feeling maybe we'll have some singing to celebrate Mark outside in the tent during lunch on the 7th. But please come out for both of those. Last thing I want to say is there's a big day on Tuesday. Since we've had a Black Lives Matter vigil outside Monday through Friday most days for well over a year now. This Tuesday is the 1-year commemoration of the murder of Walter Wallace by police in West Philadelphia. So with Power, our lead interfaith justice partner in the region and the state, we are hosting an event here on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I really invite people. Facebook this out. Tell your friends. This is an important day for the country. This is an important day for our city. Try and remember where you were last year when West Philly went up in flames. It matters that we keep the drumbeat up for racial justice and fair policing in America. So if you can, please come out or tell people to come out Tuesday. We'll have city officials here. We'll have power leaders, our own leaders, and it'll be a meaningful day to stand in solidarity with our fellow citizens. I now turn it over to our wonderful worship associate, Tom Ott.
Thank you, Kent. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Society of Germantown's virtual and tented sanctuary. We are glad you are here with us today, whether that's in the brisk outdoors, following USG's COVID safety protocols, or from home on Zoom. I am Tom Ott, and I am the worship associate for today's service. Today we have with us Reverend Dr. Om Prakash Gilmore. Dr. Gilmore was ordained as a UU minister at USG in May of 1995. He has served several years in congregations and other UU affinity groups. He received a Master's of Divinity in Creation Spirituality in 2001, and since then he's been working in order to combine social justice with health and wellness. At present, he is a spiritual life coach and licensed massage therapist, as well as a talk show host at Blog Talk Radio and a Qui-Gon teacher. Before we begin our service, I have a few brief announcements, and we ask that you check USG's publications for all that we offer. Our website, newsletters, and the pre-service announcements slideshow, which starts at 10:20 on Sunday mornings. Here are some highlights. Please check chat for links and emails and more detail. If you or someone you know is in need, please reach out to our caring team. You can reach them at caring@usguu.org. After the story for all ages today, children will be hummed out for fall games and crafts for the spirit. The OWL cohort is meeting right now in the Sullivan area, and at 1 p.m., the youth D&D group will meet in the Labyrinth. Adults, we urgently need ushers. If you are comfortable with being in person, please consider offering your hospitable services once a month or every other month on Sunday. If you are interested, please contact Steve Conrad or the office via email. Please pay close attention to your emails for details on the next 2 Sunday services, as Kent noted. Hooray, we will be in the sanctuary. Next Sunday, we will celebrate the Day of the Dead with video performances, and on Sunday, November 7th, again, as Kent noted, we will celebrate our wonderful, now retiring music director, Mark Doherty, with musical recordings from the vault. On both Sundays, we will watch and listen to recordings which cannot be managed well in the tent. This Tuesday at 5 p.m., join the Standing in Solidarity for Racial Justice Vigil commemorating the 1-year anniversary, as Kent noted, of the death in Philadelphia of Walter Wallace Jr. Hospice chaplain Maggie Beaumont will again offer a death cafe this Thursday evening, October 28th. Attendance is limited, so please save your seat. Again, the link is in chat and will be in Monday's Spirit email. On a lighter note, this Saturday from 1 to 4, we'll gather under and around the tent to carve pumpkins. Carvers of all ages are welcome. Finally, Our Diwali celebration, created for us with love each year by Andrea Durham, will happen on Saturday, November the 6th. Make Rangoli and enjoy speakers and performances in the afternoon under the tent, and enjoy the ceremony of the Festival of Lights on Zoom Saturday evening. For more information on these events and others, please go to usguu.org and click on the News and Events tab. Finally, before you leave today, please return your chair to the racks to do what you can to help us fold our tent. Then next Sunday, those of you who can, if you would come around 9:30 to help set up. Let us now turn our attention to the here and now and to our spirits as we begin our celebration of life. I will now light the chalice and offer words to begin our service. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers, to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Good morning, USG. I'm Latifah Griffin Rogers, your intern minister, and I have a story for you all this morning. Also, if you are looking to get warm, just bust out and go for a jog. Um, you'll really be warmed up then. All right. So our story of all ages this morning is it's by Janine Groschmeyer, and it's called "A Lamp in Every Corner." And it's from our Unitarian Universalist storybook. So settle in. The story's kind of lengthy, but just use your imaginations with me. Many years ago, in the land of Transylvania, in a mountain valley watered by quick rushing streams and shadowed by great forests of beech trees, there was a small village of wooden houses with dark shingled roofs. The people in the village were of Unitarian religion, and they wanted a church of their own. A church set on a hillside, they decided, looking down upon the village as a mother looks down upon her sleeping child. So all of the people of the village labored long and hard to build themselves a church. The stonemasons hammered sharp chisels to cut great blocks of gray stone, then set the stones into stout and sturdy walls. The glaziers made tiny glass panes and fitted them neatly into the windows with leaded lines. The foresters sawed all the tall beech trees into enormous beams and laid the trusses for the ceilings, then covered the roof with close-fitted wooden shingles that wouldn't leak a drop of rain, kind of like our tent this morning. The carpenters carved wood for the pair of wide opening doors, setting them on strong pegs so that the doors hung straight and square. A bell was brought from a faraway city, then hoisted by ropes with a heave and a hoe to the top of the tower. The weavers wove fine cloths for the altar table, cloths embroidered with flowers and edged with lace. The smiths hammered black iron into tall lampstands and hammered thin bronze into shining oil lamps. Finally, when the building of the church was done, the painting of the church could begin. The painters mixed the bright colors, royal red and shimmering gold and brilliant blue, and everyone in the village, old and young, women and men, boys and girls, came to decorate the church. They painted flowers, they painted trees, they painted designs all around the windows and different designs around the doors. And at the end of the day, when it was finished, when their church was finally done, all of the people in the village stood back and admired it, and then to sing a song of happiness and praise. Their village had a church now, a church set on the hillside, looking down upon the village as a mother looks down upon her sleeping child. "We will eat now," announced an elder of the village, because everyone was hungry after their long day of work. Later tonight, we will come back and pray. So the people of the village went down the hillside to their homes and their suppers, all except one little girl named Zora and her father, who stayed behind. They had brought their own bread and cheese, and they ate their food slowly, sitting on the grass on the hillside, admiring their new church with its strong stone walls and its tall tower and magnificent bell. After they had eaten, they went back inside, opening those carved wooden doors to go into the gloriously painted sanctuary inside. "Oh, look, Father," Zora cried, running from pitcher to pitcher with her footsteps echoing off the stone walls. "See how grand?" "Yes, it is," said her father, looking around and nodding with pride. "Yes, it is." "But Father," she said suddenly, "we have not finished." "What do you mean?" "There are tall iron lampstands along the wall, but there are no lamps. The church will be dark when the people come back." "Ah, little one," said her father, "the light of the church comes from its people. You shall see." He rang the bell to call the people to worship, then took his daughter by the hand and led her back outside. They waited on a grassy hillside next to their beautiful church of strong gray stone. The sun had set behind the mountains and night was coming soon. Yet in the growing darkness, tiny points of light came from many directions and moved steadily up the hill. "Each family is entrusted with a lamp, little one," her father explained. "Each family lights its own way here." "Well, where's our family lamp?" "Your mother's carrying it. She will be here soon." The many lights moved closer together, gathering into one moving stream, all headed the same way, growing larger and brighter all the time. And Zora's mother arrived, bearing a burning lamp in her hand. The father lifted Zora so she could set so she could set their family's lamp high in its tall iron stand. All around the church, other families were doing the same. Soon the church was ablaze with light in every corner, for all of the people of the village had gathered to pray and sing. All through the worship service, Zora watched the lights flicker and glow. She watched her family's lamp most of all. And when the service was over, her father lifted her high. She took the shining bronze lamp from the lampstand. Its curved sides were warm and smooth in her hands, and her mother carried the lamp home with the flame lighting the way. The flame lit their house when they returned home, and Zora washed her face and got ready for bed by the light of the flame. "Mother," Zora began as she climbed into bed to lay down. "Yes, little one," her mother asked, tucking the red wool blanket around Zora's shoulders. "Father said the light of the church comes from its people." "Yes, but also the people take their light from the church." Over by the table, by the fireplace, the shiny bronze lamp was still burning. "And we have that light every day." "Yes, indeed," said her mother. "And even when we are not in church, even when the lamp is not lit, we carry the light of truth in our minds and the flame of love in our hearts to show us the right way to be. And that light, the light from truth and love, will never go out." "Never?" asked Zora. "Never," said her mother. "And this bronze lamp will last for many, many years. When you are grown, we will give you the bronze lamp to you. And when your children are grown, you will give the lamp to them. And all of you will carry it back and forth to church every time." "But there is only one lamp," Zora said. "So make another and let the light grow. And someday tell your children to make more lamps too. And now, good night," her mother said and kissed Zora once on the cheek. Zora closed her eyes and drifted into a dream while her mother looked down upon her sleeping child. The years passed and Zora grew. The bronze lamp came into her care. She kept it polished and clean. And when the bell rang out across the valley to call the people to worship, she carried the lamp back and forth to church on the hillside, the flame always lighting her way. And when the time came, she made more lamps and gave them to her children, who made more lamps and gave them to their children. And so it went and throughout the years, even until today. And always, the light of truth and the flame of love from that Unitarian church on the hillside continue to grow and show them and us the way. This morning, I want you to ponder and think about, how do you intend to keep the light of truth shining for generations to come? And are you doing your part? Blessed be and amen.
I really like Latifa. Good job. You want me?
We'll now hum the children out. All children are welcome to come with me down to the tent, and we're going to have some games and crafts for the spirit.
You want to sit at the counter or at the table?
Thank you, Mark. All right, we are now at the point of our service where we are praying for our community and world. And then afterwards, we are going to do a call and response prayer. So if you have your order of service, once I start the prayer, you will follow along as the congregation. Then afterwards, we'll sing Spirit of Life. Let us keep Rudy Sprinkle and Andrea Barsovic and their family in our thoughts and prayers as they mourn the death of Rudy's older brother, Phil Sprinkle. Phil passed away peacefully on Tuesday, October the 12th, at the age of 89. He resided in North Indiana. Let's please make sure we love on Rudy and Andrea this morning. Friends, let us pause for a minute to sit in deliberate silence before we speak the words of prayer. I now invite you to join me in reciting the prayer. Creator, we are thankful for this moment. Hear our prayers, our thoughts, and feel our energy. We are gracious for each and every person this morning, gracious for each and every moment this weekend. We are gathered here in covenant. Let us trust in each other, nurture each other, and love on each other. Let us be in tune to this moment to invite Spirit to commune with this USG community. Guide our steps, our ways, our hearts, and lead us towards a better future. Let us be grateful for love, and let us be grateful for each other. And amen. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's very good to meet here. It's been a long time since I've been here, and even when I look back and remember when I was, it's sort of like I have this COVID fog where I can't remember. It's like time has just warped itself and twisted itself so that I can't remember half of the things I did before it. It's almost like we've been in this thing forever, but we are coming out of it, which is very good, especially during this time of year. We come together, it's nice and cool, nice, beautiful breezes here. And we're coming to a time in the calendar, the old calendar, when we're coming to the end of the year for Samhain or Halloween or the Day of the Dead or any of those times actually come at what was considered at one time in many European indigenous communities anyway, as the time that the year ended and the new year began, the time of the last harvest where people were going into the darkness And during that time, something amazing was supposed to happen. The veil between the two worlds was supposed to get thinner and thinner until we could speak with the ancestor spirits. The bones of our ancestors would speak with us, would help heal our communities, would help make us whole again, and move us through the cold, freezing winters into a time of life and spring when the sun would return and the plants would begin to grow. This is a very good way of thinking about the way the world works. Sometimes we wonder about it nowadays. We're in a material scientific paradigm and mode, and we wonder if it's true. But if we really begin to understand the way the world worked back then, we will see it has a lot of validity. There's a book called by Julian Jaynes called The Bicameral Mind, Breaking of the Bicameral Mind. She basically puts forward that at one time, our minds were different. Our psyches were different. At one time, what we would call the collective consciousness or the collective mind was the only thing that was present. So when people moved together in hunter and gathering groups, when people moved together in villages at one time, it was one mind working within that group. Everyone was like one cell of a body, and they were all connected. So when we begin to look at that mindset at that time, we see that those old tales and stories that we hear about were the psychology and the psychotherapy of that day. They work with stories, they work with myth, they work with archetypes the same way today that Lacanian psychologists and most psychologists work with archetypes, with the shadow. They work with the veil that exists within the mind, the veil that is known as the censor that separates the ego and the conscious mind from the subconscious and the collective conscience. But something happened, you see, that separated these ideas. We started to think that, well, maybe back then there was this type of group mind, but now we become individuals. We're not like that anymore. But when we explore deeply our individuality, we find that we are going deeply down into a collective consciousness where all of these thoughts and all of these ideas and all of this knowledge is still present. A collective subconscious. At one time, there was a big shift in the human mind. At one time, according to many writers, especially Rutger Bregman, when he talks about humankind, he talks about a time when there was a shift from the hunter and gathering mindset into what we have now. He talks about a time when there was actually a shift in the human brain, a shift in the human mind, a shift when we begin to develop our individuality. There was a time, actually, according to Leonard Slane, when we began to read more. We moved from a mythical society and we moved to a literary society. And there was actually a shift that took place in our brains. The left brain of the human being became dominant at that time, and it began to shut off the right brain. The right brain became subdominant. So now we think that there is no collective consciousness. We think we're standing on our own, but in truth, this collective consciousness, this subconscious, this power underneath is still working within us. That is why we can be moved so easily as groups when we fall into what people call the group mind or the individuation, because those voices are still there. They're still working with us. And there is this dance between the collective and the individual that we don't seem to acknowledge. And so when we hear the voices, we try to ignore them. We don't pay attention to them. We think that it's just some problem. So we find a way to avoid them by working harder, by studying, by taking on some type of addictive behavior, whether it is good or bad. But at night, usually, when it is quiet, sometimes the voice of the ancestors speak. When we're not busy, the voice of the ancestors speak. When we're not watching TV or listening to the radio, we hear the voices. And even when we meditate sometimes, we hear the voices. But I think nowadays, with all that is going on, the voices are starting to drive us into depression and pain, not because of what they're saying, but we've learned not to listen to them. And that is the issue. In our country, it is said that more than 50% of the people are on some type of medication, whether it is taking some type of drugs or something like that, or it is taking psychotropics. We're on this medication because our voices are telling us we're in the wrong direction. We're going in the wrong direction. And so we can be successful. We can have everything we ever wanted. We can have fame and fortune, but still the voices are there saying you're going in the wrong direction. But we keep pushing forward and pushing forward instead of stopping, taking the time to listen, going through that veil on the individual level. That veil is the censor. And on the collective level, we have run into a collective censor. Our collective censor is how we have been socialized in our society not to hear certain things or not to see certain things, to only believe in certain things in one way, to be afraid to stand out and be different, when our differences and our standing out is what makes us human and what makes us divine. And so we come to a time during our lives when our collective conscious is being assaulted and beat down, and we are being forced to hear those voices. All of the history that is coming up, horrible history about past atrocities, histories about things that we thought we knew about that weren't true, all of the lies, all of those things are just coming out into the open, and we're being assaulted with all of these truths. You see, because what they say about the spirits coming through is that sometimes they're pleasant, but sometimes they're painful and mischievous. And sometimes those bones of our ancestors are not pleasant. Sometimes they are the bones of the ancestors who are buried in the shallow graves or the mass graves, the ones who huddled in the cold afraid as people broke in and murdered and killed them and took their children away and drove their children to what I call the turning point. What is the turning point? When people who are good and kind and loving have to turn and become angry and violent in order to survive. The only issue then is that sometimes they cannot get back to being loving and kind. And so these ancestors speak to us. They tell us, I became violent and angry to fight off people so you could live a life of wonder and beauty, so that you wouldn't have to be violent. I died holding on to my love and goodness so that you would remember me. The voices keep speaking. The question is, how do we respond to these voices? Ignoring them will not work anymore. I remember watching a talk show where a Buddhist was on, and they said that he was talking about life being like a dream, and he was saying that sometimes you have this dream and you don't want to listen to what is being said, so it just keeps coming back. And it keeps coming back stronger and stronger in each time until it becomes a nightmare, so that you have to hear what's being said. In our society right now, what has been being said is coming back more and more. Now we are living through the nightmare. How do we live through this nightmare? One way is by remembering who and what we really are. There is a writer named Brian Swimme, who is a cosmologist and a scientist. He speaks about who the human beings are. Brian Swimme talks about the evolutionary process. He talks about a long time ago when the earth was boiling and there was all kinds of chemicals and all kinds of things on the earth, and somehow something miraculous happened. Somehow some lipids and a few proteins and a few strands of nucleic acids all got together and something happened. Just a little bubble, and all of that energy and all of that chemical stayed together. It found a way to take in just enough energy so it wouldn't freeze, and to release enough so it didn't explode. And on that little piece of protein, it wrote an instruction on how it could replicate itself so that it could replicate life. And he says, as time went on, as more and more cells developed and more organisms, they just wrote another little code on that DNA. It told it how to evolve, how to live in life as it was. And as time went on and on and on, it developed more and more and more until what we are occurred. And along with that was the mental DNA, the mental memes, the fact that these small things, whatever they were, had offspring, took care of them, taught them how to learn and live in whatever environment they were, taught them how to be successful. And as time went on, that happened to us over and over and over again. These lessons, this mental DNA, mental ideas, mental stories that we took deep down into our subconscious that we carry with us over and over and over again. And so, in fact, if we look at the long line of reality, we are our ancestors. We carry them in our hearts. We carry them in our minds and in our subconscious even. We carry all of those little lessons that they taught us by the way they looked at something, by the vibe we picked up when they weren't even noticing, by the stories they told us, by our lives. We have all of these things stored in our subconscious, deep in our subconscious. We have learned that we are only one single being. We're running around like little bubbles bouncing around, when in actuality, that collective mindset is still there. And that power, that creative energy that allowed those things to link together, to create life, is still there. And we all have that power to come together and to create life, and to create the type of life that we would desire. The bones of our ancestors are telling us that it is time for us to turn back to our origins, to wake up, to create a world of justice, equity, and compassion. And we who meet together can be at the forefront of that. There is an old story that the old preachers in the Pentecostal church used to talk about all the time, which is very interesting. It's about this prophet Ezekiel. It talks about the prophet Ezekiel, where they said that the Spirit took Ezekiel by the top of his head and sort of lifted him out of his body and took him to this big valley. And he looks out over this valley, and all that he sees is dust and dirt and old dried out bones. And this Spirit says, "Can these bones live again?" And Ezekiel says, "Well, you know, I don't know, you know." So this spirit says, preach to these bones. So Ezekiel starts preaching, and all of a sudden, all this wind comes whipping up from all the four directions and whirling around. And of course, the word for wind in many languages is also spirit, is also energy. So he talks about these energies, these spirits from all the four directions, not just one direction, not just his direction, but the four corners of the world come in and whip around. And all of a sudden, all these bones begin to come together and click together. And all the flesh comes up upon these bones. And within this valley, there is a whole nation of living, powerful beings doing the work of the Spirit and the work of life, bringing life and light to a world that has been covered in darkness. And as we come together here today, I would suggest that that is who we are. And I'm not saying that we are that nation. I am saying that we are Ezekiel. It is time for us to go into the world and bring forth this message, not only in word, but in deed, to teach the world the exact same way that our ancestors from the first cell to now have taught us. For we are the crown of glory of the ancestors that went before us. That is who we are, not the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. We are life. And out of our hearts and hands, we can bring forth life, and life more abundantly. Amen, everyone. We will have, let me see, the hymn, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire.
Whoa. A tall man. Thank you, Dr. Gilmore, for that wonderful sermon. This church and congregation are places of love, giving, hope, and action, where we work together to make the world a better place. Please be as generous as you can as we now gratefully receive the offering for the ongoing work of this community. If you are joining us from home, you may make a donation by text. Instructions to make your donation by text are in the chat. You may designate your donation to apply to the Sunday collection plate or to a share the plate beneficiary or to be applied to your annual pledge. If you are worshiping in person with us today, there are collection boxes placed at the entrances to the tent. They're in the back. I don't know if I'd call it an entrance, but there it is. Please place your donation in the collection boxes as you leave today. You may pick up an envelope in which to place your donation and fill it out with your information before placing the donation in the collection box. Thank you. Mark?
Compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice. Justice and joy. Peace at the table, revising the roles, deciding the share. And grace, dividing and God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy. Compassion and peace. And God will delight when we are creators of justice. Justice and joy. For young and for old, a place at the table. Of a child in hands that are wrinkled. For young and for old, the right to belong. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy, compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice, justice and joy, joy. For everyone born, a place at the table, to live without fear and simply
very much for that beautiful piece. Mark, you always impress me. The closing words come from Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson writes, "I shall take my voice wherever there are those who want to hear the melody of freedom or the words that might inspire hope and courage in the face of despair and fear. My weapons are peaceful, for it is only by peace that peace can be attained. The song of freedom must prevail. May it prevail in each and every one of our hearts. Amen, so be it, and blessed be." Now we shall have the extinguishing of the chalice.
I will now extinguish the chalice, even as we know that the flame continues to burn in our hearts as we practice the 8 principles of our faith during the coming week.
Peace, peace, shalom. Peace I leave with you, peace I give to you, peace, peace, shalom. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, peace, shalom. Shalom. My peace I give to you. Shalom. 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 My peace I give to you. Peace. Peace. Shalom.
Peace I leave with you, peace I give to you, peace, peace, shalom. Not as this world gives, I give to you. Do not be afraid.
Shalom. My peace I give to you. Shalom. Shalom. Shalom.
My peace I give
That was lovely. Before we pass the peace and return to our everyday lives, thanks again to Reverend Gilmore for his presence here at USG and his inspiring words. Also, please see your program for acknowledgement of everyone who has worked so hard to make this service possible this morning. If you're here on campus, please feel free to stay and chat with friends, recognizing that social distancing is still required, as is recognition of people's comfort levels with physical touching. If you have attended virtually, please stay online and you'll be whisked to a breakout room as soon as the service has concluded. And now, to all, please pass the peace. Amen.